Destiny 2, one of the biggest MMOs that is around at the moment, and there's probably going to be a lot of new players joining in now that Lightfall is released, because with every new DLC, there seems to be a new influx of new players, and on top of that, there are returning veterans as well. But if you are just starting out in Destiny 2, it can be overwhelming to say the least, because there is so much in the game that you can actually get yourself into that you can feel lost at a lot of times. So just to go over a couple of things: DPS metas, build crafting, knowing which mods to slot into your armor, power levels, and even weapon crafting. It's a lot to take on alongside all the other stuff. And whilst Bungie does do a decent job in trying to guide new players in order to get familiar with the game, I do feel like it does lack in some cases. So this is where this series is going to come in, because I want to kind of break everything down for new players and how you can actually take it apart in ways and learn the game properly. But of course, everybody learns in different ways. Some people do it by just doing, and some others will watch videos like this and learn it this way. But either way, both perspectives still apply, and sometimes it's better to learn both ways because you might pick up on something that you didn't know originally. So just to go over the first part of this newbie guide that I'm going to be making, this will be a playlist series that I'll be having on my channel, so if you do like this, then obviously subscribe, there will be more coming. But we're going to basically break it down into nice little small bits, so it's easy to digest and come back to when you need to. And if you haven't guessed already, my name is The Hurley Apple. I have contributed nearly 2,000 hours into this game already, and I've recently got my first A1 clear, and probably as of this video's going out, I'm on my way to 100th raid clear as well, so I have been around for this game for a fair amount of time now. So starting with the absolute basic thing that you want to do when you join the game, you have to think about what class you want to pick, because there is 3. And whilst you can select a gender and also a race, which is going to be Exo, Awoken, or Human, there is 3 major classes that you need to choose from. And that would be the Hunter, the Warlock, and the Titan. But just from hearing those names alone, you can kind of get a very rough idea of what each of them might do. So the Hunter might be good at damage, the Warlock is probably some kind of wizard, just from the name alone, and the Titan, you can have an imagination that it's going to be someone who's quite beefy, which you're not wrong. But rather than just give you that description to go off on, I'll just give you a bit of a demonstration of what their supers can do. So starting with the Hunter, they tend to be the DPS folks of the group, so most people tend to flock to this because that is just the way it is. Everybody likes doing the most damage, let's just admit that outright now. And the first super we're going to look at is called Golden Gun, and there are actually 2 types of Golden Gun for the Hunter. The first one is a standard 6-shot shooter where you can just basically do a lot of damage to add. You won't hit any critical damage though, and I'll go over to that in a second. But when you're running around the PvP environments, this tends to be a good pick because you can just take out Guardians with 1 shot. So having 6 of them does actually play a benefit. Not to mention, if you do actually get kills with this super, you actually get ammo back as well. Obviously, it's not unlimited, but it is still a nice perk to think about. Going over to the other type of Golden Gun, there is the Precision Shot, which basically turns the 6-shot into a 3, and if you get headshots, you'll do drastically more damage, which basically is a critical hit. And the third subclass for Solar is called Blade Barrage, where you just literally throw loads of blades at pretty much anything that moves. It does quite a lot of damage. I think it's one of the highest damage supers in the game, but it depends on how you do your build, but again, that's for another video. Next, we're going to move over to Arc Hunters, and the super you're seeing right now is called Arc Staff, and this is very good for just general control of a group of enemies, while also being quite versatile because you can run around with it, and on top of that, you can actually deflect enemy projectiles as well. The other half of Arc is called Gathering Storm, and you basically just take the same staff that you was using for Arc Staff, and instead you just throw it and it becomes like a totem pole in a way, so it just blasts out a lot of lightning. And believe it or not, this actually does a lot of damage, and on top of that, it is very good for placing a mark if you need to guard an area. So if you have a bottleneck, for example, you could throw it down there and clear out ads completely just with 1 Arc Staff. Finally, we have Void Hunters. Now, Void Hunters are mostly the debuff parties because they have something that is known as Tether. And what Tether basically does, it will latch on to nearby enemies and cause them to take more damage with any kind of weapons that hit them. But as you can probably see, there are 2 types of Tether. There's the 1 shot that you just seen, and then the 2 burst that you're seeing now, which fires a volley of 3 void arrows at once. The main difference between these 2 is that the single shot lasts a lot longer and is mainly used just for debuffing, whereas the volley of 3s tends to be used more for a damage perspective, whilst also applying the debuff. But finally, for the Void Hunters, we have a super called Spectral Blades, and it's pretty much what it says on the tin. You can run around with 2 blades and turn yourself invisible to be the bane of everybody in a PvP arena. But that is basically Hunters and what they can do with their supers. Now we move on to the Warlocks. Starting again with Solar, Warlocks can do 2 different things. The first one is called Dawn Blade, which you can see now, and you can basically fly around with a solar blade that fires solar arcs towards enemies, and yes, it does hurt in the PvP environment as well. Not only that, you can also do something called Phoenix Dash, which allows you to actually get even higher, making your glide even longer, so you basically fly. The other half of Solar is probably the best buff that you can give to any fire team, which is called Well of Radiance, because not only does this give you and your fire team a lot of healing whilst you're standing in it, it also gives you a weapon buff as well. As for the Warlocks, they probably have my favourite super, or at least the coolest looking one in my opinion, which is called Chaos Reach, and it is pretty much a one-handed Kamehameha wave, so yeah, go nuts anime fans. But if Star Wars is more your thing, then maybe you want to be a Sith Lord, because Warlocks can do that too. You can fly around and fire lightning from your hands, I am not even joking. Which is pretty much what the second super is, and it's probably not used as much as it should be. It is definitely something fun to try out. Moving over to Void, we have something that is a absolute lethal machine, which is called Nova Bomb. And yes, it is as deadly as it sounds. You launch this at any Guardian, you are vaporizing them into next week. Not to mention it does a whole lot of damage to pretty much anything it hits anyway, but there is two types of Nova Bomb that you can use. The first one basically does a lot of damage on impact, as you see, but then it also splits off into little ones as well. And yes, the little ones do track movement, so you can wipe out a lot of enemies at once with just one Nova Bomb. The second version is called Vortex, and much like the name implies, when it hits the ground, it stays there for a bit, and it will pull enemies in and slowly vaporize them. But finally, for the Void Warlocks, you have something called Nova Warp, and literally, it is teleporting and telekinesis. I say telekinesis, it's more like a force push if anything, because you can teleport around the map in short bursts, and then just unleash a big amount of void energy, which more or less kills everything around you. But we have one more class to talk about, which is the Titans, and I'm going to be honest, I'm not experienced in Titans that much, but that's pretty much down to my friend that plays this. So for Solar Titans, you have two different supers. One is called Hammers, and this is literally what it says on the tin. So you just throw a lot of hammers, which cause a fiery explosion into something called a sunspot, and these sunspots will continuously damage enemies for as long as they're on them, provided they survive the hammer strike, which I'm going to be honest, it's not many times they do. The second part of your solar subclass is an even bigger hammer, which you can spin around and absolutely decimate large crowds of enemies with. It is a lot of fun to use. I highly actually recommend giving it a go. But there is obviously more to Titans, and this is where the Arc Titans come in. They have probably the second best DPS option in my idea, which is something called Thunder Crash. And I'm going to be completely honest, you just leap off the ground, fly through the air, and smash an enemy as hard as you can with pretty much your fist. So if you want to live the one punch dream, by all means, pick a Titan, go Thunder Crash, you'll never regret it. But that's not all the Arc Titans can do. They can do something called Fists of Havoc, which, as you can imagine, it is again them punching everything with their fists. But instead, every punch is backed up by lightning, and they can actually run around with this at quite a decent speed, so yeah, if you see one of these Titans charging at you, just get out the way. It's not going to be a fun time. But that's not everything the Titans can offer, because they also have some more tricks in their arsenal, which is where the Void Titans come in. Now, the first one to show off is called the Sentinel Shield, and this is pretty much a Captain America kind of dream. You can literally run around hurling your shield at literally anything you want. On top of this, you can guard with the shield, which will actually deflect a lot of damage. And not to mention, you can charge forward with it as well, which deals quite a lot of damage as well. But moving over to the other half of Void Titans, they have something known as the Bubble, which is easily the best defense super in the game. There is not a lot getting through a bubble unless someone else is popping a really powerful super on top of it. Not only that, you can actually buff your teammates with it as well, because they can run through it and get something called Weapons of Light, which is a weapon buff. So just to summarize it all in my own words, Hunters tend to be the damage dealers of the groups, where if you want to fantasize about doing massive damage or wiping out huge waves of ads with one super, then Hunter is probably a good dream for you to have. Warlocks, whilst they are mostly a support class when it comes to Well of Radiance and other buffs they can provide for fire teams, you can also do a lot of damage and be quite versatile with them as well with their supers. And finally, Titans, they are basically just punching machines that are really good defenders. That is probably the best way I can put Titans. But the really good thing about Destiny is you don't have to dedicate yourself to just one class, because as you can probably see right now, there is 3 slots you can pick, and if you want to do what I've done, just pick one of every class, try all 3 out, and just see how you get on. You'll find one that you like. But for the eagle-eyed viewers, you might have noticed that I actually had more subclasses on my Hunter, and these are known as Stasis and Strand. So whilst I haven't discussed this in this video, these are DLC subclasses which you can get with Beyond Light and also Lightfall. And the reason I'm not talking about them is because if you're just trying this game out for the first time, you probably won't encounter using these at all, so there is not much point for me to talk about these, and if you do end up buying the DLCs, I'm pretty sure you're going to figure it out for yourself. Not to mention, there is a lot of videos around on YouTube anyway, going through both Stasis and Strand, so if you were really curious about them, it's very easy to find a video discussing them anyway. But that is basically an overview of all 3 classes, and hopefully it will help you decide on what kind of class you want to pick. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with just making 3 characters and picking all 3 and trying to see what works out for you. But the final piece of advice I'm going to give you before I end the video is make sure you do follow the new light experience, as in follow through the Guardian rank stuff that is going to be given to you, alongside the quests that are also there. And the reason I say that is because whilst it's not perfect, it is still some kind of guiding and stepping stones for you to go through in order to learn and get a good feel for the game. But that's going to be it for this video. Make sure you are subscribed because I will be talking more about things to come, and the next video is going to be on the types of gear you can get. But if you are starting Destiny brand new, I just want to quickly say welcome, and we hope you enjoy your stay with the game. But that is everything from me. Thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you all in the next video.